Welcome back to GS Coins, your home for everything related to rare currency, vintage postage, and valuable collectibles. Today, we are taking a close look at a classic piece of American philatelic history, the 1932 United States 3-cent George Washington Deep Violet postage stamp. Cataloged by collectors as Scott No. 720, this iconic stamp features the famous Gilbert Stuart portrait of George Washington, which is the exact same portrait seen on the United States $1 bill. In June of 1932, the United States Post Office raised the first-class letter postage rate from 2 cents to 3 cents. Because of this sudden change, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing had to rush a new stamp design into production, adapting the artwork from the earlier Washington Bicentennial issue. Now, let us talk about market value in today's dollar. Many people find old vintage stamps like this in family attics or mixed albums and wonder if they have hit the jackpot. Because hundreds of millions of these stamps were produced to handle daily mail during the Great Depression, standard copies remain very accessible. A typical used copy with a light postal cancellation is worth around 35 to 50 cents in today's market. If you have a mint unused copy that has been hinged, value generally ranges from 50 cents to $1. However, condition and grade matter immensely in philately. A pristine, mint never hinged single stamp with well-centered margins can trade for $1.50 to $2. Collectors looking for plate blocks or full uncirculated sheets will see higher values, with mint plate blocks selling for $3 to $5, and full mint sheets of 100 stamps bringing around $75. Extremely rare production errors, such as imperforate varieties between stamps, can easily sell for $30 or higher depending on certification and centering. Next up, the 1932 3-cent George Washington Bicentennial stamp, known to collectors as Scott No. 708. Issued as part of a famous 12-stamp commemorative series, this deep violet postage stamp was created to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the birth of America's first president. The beautiful artwork featured on this specific 3-cent denomination shows Washington in a military uniform and a tricorn hat. This striking image was adapted from a portrait painted by Charles Willson Peale in 1777. While the Continental Army was enduring the harsh winter encampment at Valley Forge, when the United States Post Office officially released this commemorative series on January 1, 1932, it captured the attention of citizens during the Great Depression. At that specific time, the 3-cent denomination was primarily used for heavier letters and international mail, though it would actually become the standard domestic first-class letter rate just a few months later. Because it was so popular and heavily utilized by the American public, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing produced a truly massive quantity of these stamps. Historical records show that over 456 million copies of this specific 3-cent deep violet stamp were printed on high-speed rotary presses. So, what is the exact market value of this 1932 3-cent Washington Bicentennial stamp in today's dollar? Because of those enormous production numbers, this stamp remains incredibly common and affordable for modern collectors who want a piece of history. If you happen to find a standard canceled, used copy in an old family album, its current retail value is only around 25 to 50 cents. A standard mint condition copy that has been previously mounted with a hinge will generally sell for 50 cents to $1. Even if you possess a pristine, mint never hinged copy with its original adhesive gum perfectly intact, the value usually ranges between $2 to $3. However, as with all vintage postage, there are specific situations where this stamp can command a higher premium. Philatelic collectors place a massive emphasis on perfect margin centering and professional grading. A mathematically perfect, flawless stamp enclosed in a professional grading slab could easily sell for $30 to $50 or more to specialized registry collectors. Additionally, intact mint plate blocks of 4 stamps typically trade for $6 to $12. And full uncut sheets of 100 stamps can sell anywhere from $40 to $75 depending on their overall preservation. Next up, the most famous and foundational issues in American philately, the historic 3-cent green George Washington banknote stamp. First issued in the 1870s, this deep green postage stamp features a prominent profile bust of George Washington after the famous marble sculpture by Jean-Antoine Houdin. Surrounded by an intricate engraved oval frame, these classic bank note issues were produced during a fascinating era in American post-Civil War history when the United States Post Office contracted private printing companies to produce postage. Printings were carried out by the National Banknote Company, the Continental Banknote Company, and later the American Banknote Company, because the identical master design was transferred between different printers using different paper types, grilling processes, and subtle secret marks. Identifying the exact Scott catalog number requires careful examination of paper texture, watermarks, and subtle engraving details under magnification. Now, let us discuss market value in today's dollar for this classic 3-cent green Washington stamp. Because billions of these stamps were produced to meet standard first-class letter rates across the nation during the late 19th century, common used copies are surprisingly accessible for modern collectors. A standard used example with a heavy cancellation mark and typical off-center margins generally trades between $1 and $5. If you possess a well-preserved used copy featuring a crisp, light cancellation and strong centering, the catalog value easily increases to $15 to $30. However, condition, paper variety, and unused status make a dramatic difference in market value for banknote issues. A mint unused copy with original gum that has been previously hinged typically ranges from $40 to over $100 depending on the exact printing company contract. Unused, mint never hinged specimens with exceptional centering are exceptionally scarce and can command upwards of $300 to $900 at auction. Premium graded examples or rare grill varieties such as the elusive I grill or H grill issues can reach thousands of dollars in today's active collector market. Next up, the 1923 3-cent Abraham Lincoln Violet postage stamp from the popular series of 1922, identified in collector catalogs as Scott number 555, printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. This deep violet stamp features a powerful portrait profile of Abraham Lincoln set inside an oval frame with ornamental scrolls. The original artwork for this stamp's vignette was adapted from a famous photograph of Lincoln taken by Matthew Brady in 1864, which was the same historic photo later used for the portrait on the United States $5 bill. Released on February 12, 1923, on Lincoln's birthday, this 3-cent issue was initially printed using flat plate presses with gauge 11 perforations. Over 372 million copies were produced to meet post office demands during the 1920s. Later printings in 1925 were produced on high-speed rotary presses, creating the gauge 10 perforation variety known as Scott number 584. Now, let us examine the true market value of this 1923 3-cent Lincoln Violet stamp in today's dollar, because hundreds of millions of these stamps were circulated for parcel post and heavier mail during the 20s. Ordinary copies are very common and affordable for everyday collectors. A standard used copy with a typical postal cancellation mark currently trades between $1 and $2. If you happen to have a standard unused or mint-hinged copy, the retail market value generally ranges from $10 to $15 depending on overall condition and color freshness. However, superior condition and original gum significantly increase the market price for serious philatelists. A mint, never hinged example featuring crisp original gum and well-centered margins routinely commands between $30 and $45 in today's market. If you possess a mathematically centered, flawless stamp that receives a high numerical grade like VFX 90 or GEM 95 from a professional grading service, the value can easily soar to $100 or more. Furthermore, mint intact plate blocks of 4 from early flat plate runs typically sell for $200 to $300, making them a prized centerpiece for vintage-us collections. Next up, the 1954 3-cent Statue of Liberty Deep Violet postage stamp, cataloged in the Scott system as number 1035, issued on June 24, 1954, as the very first stamp of the famous Liberty series. This classic stamp displays the upper half of Lady Liberty raising her torch, accompanied by the bold national motto "In God We Trust" surrounding her crown, printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on high-speed rotary presses with perforation gauge 11 by 10 and a half. This 1954 issue holds a unique place in postal history. It was released during a major post-war effort to refresh American definitive postage, officially replacing the long-running 1938 presidential series. The United States Post Office produced tens of billions of Liberty Series stamps during their years of active service, making them a staple on everyday letters, bill payments, and postcards throughout the mid-1950s. Now, let us examine the realistic market value of this 1954 3-cent Statue of Liberty stamp in today's dollar. Because of the vast astronomical production numbers generated during the 50s, single copies remain very common and accessible for collectors today. A standard used copy featuring a typical postal cancel generally trades for 25 to 35 cents. If you have an unused or mint-hinged copy, the retail value is similarly modest, ranging between 35 cents and 75 cents. Even a pristine, mint never hinged example with full original gum usually sells for around $1 to $2. However, specialized items and high-grade varieties carry a bit more collector interest. A mint plate block of 4 stamps generally sells for $1.50 to $3, while a complete, uncirculated mint sheet of 100 stamps typically fetches $20 to $30. Furthermore, rare production errors such as stamps missing perforations or dramatic color variations can fetch upwards of $50. And professionally graded Gem 98 copies sold at auction can bring higher premiums. Next up, the 1954 3-cent Statue of Liberty Deep Violet Postage Stamp, cataloged in the Scott system as number 1035, issued on June 24, 1954, as the very first stamp of the famous Liberty series. This classic stamp displays the upper half of Lady Liberty raising her torch, accompanied by the bold national motto "In God We Trust" surrounding her crown, printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on high-speed rotary presses with perforation gauge 11 by 10.5. This 1954 issue holds a unique place in postal history. It was released during a major post-war effort to refresh American definitive postage, officially replacing the long-running 1938 presidential series. The United States Post Office produced tens of billions of Liberty Series stamps during their years of active service, making them a staple on everyday letters, bill payments, and postcards throughout the mid-1950s. Now, let us examine the realistic market value of this 1954 3-cent Statue of Liberty stamp in today's dollar. Because of the vast astronomical production numbers generated during the 50s, single copies remain very common and accessible for collectors today. A standard used copy featuring a typical postal cancel generally trades for 25 to 35 cents. If you have an unused or mint-hinged copy, the retail value is similarly modest, ranging between 35 cents and 75 cents. Even a pristine, mint never hinged example with full original gum usually sells for around $1 to $2. However, specialized items and high-grade varieties carry a bit more collector interest. A mint plate block of 4 stamps generally sells for $1.50 to $3, while a complete, uncirculated mint sheet of 100 stamps typically fetches $20 to $30. Furthermore, rare production errors such as stamps missing perforations or dramatic color variations can fetch upwards of $50. And professionally graded Gem 98 copies sold at auction can bring higher premiums. Next up, the 1955 3-cent Panama Railroad 100th Anniversary Stamp, issued by the Canal Zone Postal Service and designated in collector catalogs as Scott number 147, released on January 28, 1955. This striking deep violet stamp commemorates the centennial of the Panama Railroad's completion in 1855, which was the very first transcontinental rail link across the Americas. The detailed artwork on this issue was adapted from an old vintage woodcut depicting an early 1852 steam locomotive pulling passenger cars along the lush tropical Isthmus of Panama. To mark this momentous centennial, the Canal Zone postal authorities held a special first-day ceremony that included a historic train ride where passengers dressed in pre-Civil War era period attire, printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on high-speed rotary presses with perforation gauge 11 by 10.5. Only 500,000 copies of this commemorative were produced, making its total printing run far smaller than typical mainland United States postal issues. Now, let us discuss the realistic market value of this 1955 Canal Zone Panama Railroad stamp in today's dollar. Because total production was limited to just 500,000 copies, this stamp carries a nice premium over standard US issues from the 1950s, making it a favorite among transportation and territory stamp collectors. A standard used copy with a clean Canal Zone postmark generally sells for around $1 to $2. If you possess a mint unused hinged copy, the retail value ranges between $2 and $3.50 for collectors who seek top quality. A pristine, mint never-hinged single stamp with full original gum usually trades for $3 to $5. Specialized collecting items carry even greater value in today's active philatelic market. A mint plate block of 4 stamps routinely sells for $15 to $25, while a full uncirculated mint sheet of 50 stamps can fetch between $75 and $120 depending on centering and overall condition. First-day covers canceled on January 28, 1955 are also very popular and sell for around $5 to $10. Next up, we are looking at an iconic literary commemorative from the late 1940s, the 1948 3-cent William Allen White postage stamp, designated in collector catalogs as Scott number 960. Released on July 31, 1948, in Emporia, Kansas, this bright red violet stamp honors William Allen White, the legendary Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, author, and beloved editor known nationwide as the Sage of Emporia. The classical design of this stamp was modeled after the famous 1940 Famous American series, featuring an engraved portrait of White inside an oval frame adorned with a book, scroll, and quill pen. Printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on high-speed rotary presses with perforation gauge 10.5 by 11. Over 77 million copies were issued to celebrate White's immense contributions to American journalism and free speech. Now, let us discuss the realistic market value of this 1948 William Allen White stamp in today's dollar, because tens of millions of these 3-cent commemoratives were saved by collectors and everyday citizens. Standard copies remain very affordable and easy to add to your collection. A typical used example with a standard postal cancellation mark trades for around 30 to 40 cents. If you have a mint unused copy that has been hinged, retail market value ranges between 35 cents and 75 cents. Even a pristine, mint never hinged single stamp with full original gum usually sells for around 40 cents to $1. However, specialized collector pieces command slightly higher values in today's philatelic market. A mint plate block of 4 stamps routinely sells for $1.50 to $2.50. While an intact, uncirculated mint sheet of 50 stamps generally sells for $15 to $25. Furthermore, first-day covers canceled in Emporia, Kansas on July 31, 1948 typically bring $2 to $3, and exceptionally high-graded gem-certified singles can bring $20 to $35 at auction. Next up, we are looking at a classic architectural commemorative, the 1958 3-cent Gunston Hall postage stamp, designated in collector catalogs as Scott number 1108, issued on June 12, 1958. In Lorton, Virginia, this light green stamp honors the 200th anniversary of Gunston Hall, the historic colonial plantation home of George Mason, who was one of America's most influential founding fathers and the principal author of the Virginia Declaration of Rights. The detailed design depicts a front perspective view of the Georgian-style mansion, framed by crossed quill pens in the top corners to symbolize George Mason's seminal contributions to American liberty and constitutional rights. Printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing using rotary presses with perforation gauge 11 by 10.5. Over 108 million copies were produced to meet national postal demands during the late 1950s. Now, let us discuss the realistic market value of this 1958 Gunston Hall stamp in today's dollar. Because over 100 million copies were produced and widely saved by collectors, standard individual stamps remain very affordable today. A typical used example with a standard postal cancellation mark trades for around 35 cents. If you have a mint unused copy that has been hinged, retail market value ranges between 35 cents and 50 cents. Even a pristine, mint never hinged single stamp with original gum generally sells for around 50 cents to $1. However, specialized collector items carry slightly higher market value. A mint plate block of 4 stamps routinely sells for $2 to $3, while an intact, uncirculated mint sheet of 50 stamps typically commands around $15 to $25 depending on centering and freshness. Additionally, first-day covers postmarked in Lorton, Virginia on June 12, 1958 usually sell for $2 to $3. Next up, we are looking at a celebrated milestone issue in philatelic history, the 1947 3-cent United States postage stamp Centenary stamp, cataloged in collector circles as Scott number 947, released on May 17, 1947, at the Centenary International Stamp Exhibition in New York City. This deep blue issue commemorates the 100th anniversary of the very First official U.S. postage stamps issued in 1847, the rich artwork on this stamp links the origin of the U.S. mail system to modern transportation. On the left and right, set inside ovals, are portraits of George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, taken from the original 1847 10-cent and 5-cent stamps. Between them, the background displays the evolution of mail transit across a century, featuring a 19th-century Pony Express rider and early steam locomotive juxtaposed against a modern diesel train, a transoceanic steamship, and a 4-engine commercial airplane. Printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on high-speed rotary presses with gauge 11 by 10.5 perforations. Over 127 million copies were produced to celebrate a century of American postal innovation. Now, let us examine the realistic market value of this 1947 postage stamp centenary issue in today's dollar, because tens of millions of these 3-cent commemoratives were saved by collectors at the 1947 New York exhibition and across local post offices. Individual copies remain very affordable today. A standard used example with a common postal cancellation mark trades for around 30 to 40 cents. If you have a mint unused copy that has been hinged, retail market value ranges between 35 cents and 75 cents, even a pristine, mint never hinged single stamp with full original adhesive gum generally sells for around 50 cents to $1.50. However, multi-stamp configurations and exhibition souvenirs bring slightly higher values in today's active collector market. A mint plate block of 4 stamps routinely sells for $2 to $3.50. While a complete uncirculated mint sheet of 50 stamps typically commands around $10 to $18 depending on overall freshness and margin centering. First day covers postmarked at New York City on May 17, 1947, usually sell for $2 to $4. Next up, we are looking at an iconic statehood anniversary issue, the 1945 3-cent Texas statehood stamp, cataloged in collector circles as Scott number 938, released on December 29, 1945. In Austin, Texas, this dark blue stamp commemorates the 100th anniversary of Texas entering the Union as the 28th state back in 1845. The patriotic design features the stars and stripes of the United States flag positioned next to the Lone Star flag of Texas, with a subtle ray of light extending from the 28th star to the single star on the Texas flag. Printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on high-speed rotary presses with perforation gauge 11 by 10.5. Over 170 million copies were issued to meet national postal demands in the immediate post-World War II era. Now, let us discuss the realistic market value of this 1945 Texas statehood stamp in today's dollar. Because over 170 million copies were produced and widely saved by collectors, standard individual stamps remain very affordable today. A typical used example with a standard postal cancellation mark trades for around 25 to 35 cents. If you have a mint unused copy that has been hinged, retail market value ranges between 35 cents and 50 cents, even a pristine, mint never hinged single stamp with full original gum generally sells for around 50 cents to $1. However, specialized collector items carry slightly higher market value. A mint plate block of 4 stamps routinely sells for $2 to $3.50, while an intact, uncirculated mint sheet of 50 stamps typically commands around $20 to $30 depending on centering and freshness. Additionally, first day covers postmarked in Austin, Texas on December 29, 1945, usually sell for $2 to $4. Next up, we are examining one of the most famous workhorses of 19th century American postal history, the 3-cent George Washington stamp from the 1850s. Printed by Toppin, Carpenter & Co., featuring a profile bust of George Washington based on the famous sculpture by Jean-Antoine Houdon. This design was first issued in imperforate form such as Scott No. 10 and No. 11 in 1851, and later as America's first perforated stamp issue in 1857 Scott No. 26. The 3-cent rate during this period was crucial in postal history, paying the single-weight first-class letter rate for distances up to 3,000 miles across the expanding United States because millions of these stamps were produced. Determining exact catalog numbers and market value depends heavily on perforations, color variations, and line recutting types. Scott No. 11 #110185318555. Imperforate, issued in dull red or brownish carmine shades. A clean used single with clear margins typically trades between $10 and $25. Unused examples range from $150 to $350, depending on original gum quality. Scott number 26, number 26, a 18571861. Perforated 15, a typical used perforated example trades between $5 and $15 depending on centering and cancellation clarity. Sound, unused mint singles generally sell between $100 and $200. Scott number 10, hashtag 10011851. Orange brown, the scarcer early shade variation in used condition commands between $40 and $150, while fine mint copies can fetch $1,000 or more, whether imperforate or perforated. This iconic 3-cent Washington issue remains a cornerstone for any serious collection of 19th century US classics. Next up, we are examining a highly collectible back of the book official issue, the 1873 3-cent Navy Department official stamp. Printed in ultramarine and designated in collector catalogs as Scott number 037, printed by the Continental Bank Note Company on hard paper. Official stamps were created after Congress abolished the franking privilege for government officials in March of 1873 to curb mail abuse. Each executive department was assigned its own distinct color and title. The Navy Department was allocated a beautiful, distinct ultramarine shade. Like many 1,872 banknote issues, this stamp features a prominent profile bust of George Washington, flanked by stars and framed by the words Navy Department at the top. Official stamps were strictly reserved for government correspondence and were never sold directly to the general public at post offices, making well-preserved examples far scarcer than standard definitive issues of the era. Now, let us examine the realistic market value of this 1873 3-cent Navy Department stamp in today's dollar used condition, because these were actively used on official naval mail during the 1870s. Cancelled copies are relatively attainable. A standard used single with average centering and a typical postal cancellation typically trades between $10 and $20 depending on condition, unused mint hinged. Unused examples that were kept in government files or acquired by early collectors generally sell between $70 and $100 depending on margin centering and gum condition. Mint never hinged, true mint, never hinged singles with full original gum and strong centering are extremely scarce for official banknote issues and routinely command $150 to $250 or more at auction. High grade, certified copies or rare soft paper varieties Scott 037A can bring higher premiums among specialized back-of-the-book collectors. Next up, we are taking a close look at a beloved mid-1930s commemorative issue, the 1934 3-cent Mothers of America postage stamp, designated in philatelic catalogs as Scott number 737, issued on May 2, 1934, in Washington, D.C., just ahead of Mother's Day. This famous deep violet stamp pays tribute to the mothers of the nation under the inscription in memory and in honor of the mothers of America. The moving design on this stamp was personally suggested by President Franklin D. Roosevelt and was adapted from the iconic 1871 painting arrangement in gray and black number 1, universally known as Whistler's Mother, painted by James Abbott McNeill Whistler. To tailor the classical artwork for an American Mother's Day tribute, Bureau of Engraving and Printing engravers added a vase of white carnations in the lower left corner, printed in massive quantities on rotary presses with gauge 11 by 10.5 perforations. Over 193 million flat plate and rotary copies were distributed to post offices nationwide. Now, let us examine the true market value of this 1934 3-cent Mothers of America stamp in today's dollar. Because nearly 200 million copies were produced and widely saved by collectors and the public during the Great Depression, individual stamps remain very affordable for everyday collections. A standard used example featuring a typical postal cancellation mark currently trades for around 25 to 35 cents. If you happen to have a mint unused copy that has been hinged, retail market value ranges between 35 cents and 75 cents, even a pristine, mint never hinged single stamp with full original adhesive gum generally sells for around 50 cents to $1.50 in today's market. However, specialized collector items carry slightly higher premiums. A mint plate block of 4 stamps routinely sells for $2 for dollars, while an intact, Uncirculated mint sheet of 50 stamps typically commands around $15 to $25 depending on margin centering and color freshness. First day covers postmarked in Washington, D.C. on May 2, 1934, usually sell for $2 to $5. Next up, we are looking at a classic mid-century commemorative issue, the 1954 3-cent Nebraska Territorial Centennial stamp. Cataloged in collector circles as Scott number 1060, released on May 7, 1954. In Nebraska City, Nebraska, this purple stamp commemorates the 100th anniversary of the creation of the Nebraska Territory under the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. The striking design features a pioneer sowing seeds in a field, with Mitchell Pass and Scotts Bluff rising in the background, symbolizing the agricultural heritage and spirit of the American frontier. Printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing on rotary presses with perforation gauge 11 by 10.5. Over 115 million copies were issued to meet postal demands across the country. Now, let us examine the realistic market value of this 1954 Nebraska Territorial Centennial stamp in today's market, used condition. Because over 100 million copies were produced and widely saved on incoming mail, standard used copies with a typical postal cancellation generally sell for around 25 to 35 cents, mint hinged. An unused copy that has been hinged on the back typically trades between 35 cents and 50 cents, mint never hinged. A mint single with full original gum and good centering sells in the range of 50 cents to $1, plate blocks and sheets. A mint plate block of 4 stamps routinely sells for $2 to $3, while a full mint pane of 50 stamps commands around $15 to $25. First day covers canceled at Nebraska City on May 7, 1954. Generally sell for $2 to $4. Thank you so much for watching another detailed stamp breakdown on Stamps Old World Us. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below letting us know if you collect 1952 Territorial and Statehood commemorative stamps in your collection.